call the meeting of the Iowa City Community Police Review Board to order at 5:30 p.m. And do we have Vandervet?
Here.
Townsend?
Here.
Seeberger? Nichols? Here? Oh, great, she said. Meekes?
Here.
McConnell?
Here.
Jensen?
Here.
And Downing is absent. Can I get a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any board discussion regarding the consent calendar? Okay, can I get a roll call, please? Oh, sorry.
Nichols?
Yes.
McConnell?
Here.
Meckes?
Yes.
Townsend?
Yes.
Jensen?
Hi.
Downing absent. Vanderbeck?
Yep.
They change it up a little bit, right?
I know.
On to new business, we got a memo regarding proposed revisions to CPRB bylaws. Pat, has everybody got a chance to look at that?
Actually, there should be two memos
Yeah.
in the packet. One is addressing proposed amendments to the bylaws, and another one addressing another proposed amendment to the ordinance.
Do you have an extra copy of that, perchance?
I don't.
No worries, that's fine.
So, go ahead.
Do we need a motion to approve?
Yes, but I wondered if anybody had any discussion or questions, or if Pat wanted to kind of give a verbal summary.
I do. I'm, first of all, under qualifications, it leaves out the fact that when we went to 7, one of the 7 was supposed to be a police officer. And originally it said they should be retired for 5 years, and they didn't have to be from Iowa City. But then, in something that I read, I think it was one of yours, I'm not sure, it said just 5 years from the hire date, from when they were hired. And as far as I know, we never had a vote on eliminating a police officer.
Yeah, I don't know if the council ever voted on that or not. Did they? Do you know?
I don't believe so. I think, and I thought it was 2 years now.
2 years?
Yeah.
Retired 2 years?
2.
Is it current or retired or just retired? And we do have a representative. That would be me.
Oh.
So.
If I can interject, from my recollection of that was the ordinance had been changed when it went up from 5 to 7 to remove the, I guess, waiting period for separation from the department, and then after council discussion, if I remember correctly, they were comfortable with re-implementing a 2-year waiting period for the Iowa City Police Department. So someone just retires and they don't just come immediately, they can't immediately get on the board. There was some public discussion and then, or public comment, and then I think the council settled on 2 years. I think that's what the ordinance change was. So if it was an Iowa City officer, they would have to be 2 years separated from the department.
Thanks,
That
Chief. I
makes
appreciate
sense.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the council's actually voted on those changes yet. We haven't gotten, I've not gotten anything from the city attorney's office to show what language is actually approved, but
Well, my only concern about that is I think it's a good idea to have a police officer, retired or whatever on the committee. But, number one is we're not always going to be able to do that, and it's sort of like we're saying it has to happen. So I think the language should be, because of the uncertainty, the language should address that and saying, every attempt will be made whenever possible, or something like that. Secondly is, the way it is now, I think it's just a retired police officer, can be from any place. Should we stress that we prefer a retired officer from Iowa City, someone who knows the community, knows the sentiment, and some of the issues that we're dealing with, because I think having an officer, a retired officer from our city or our period would be a lot different than getting one from New York.
No.
You know,
It was supposed to be from Iowa City if possible, or surrounding counties. It
Okay.
didn't specify, but it said that they did not have to live in Iowa City.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think anybody would come from New York to volunteer.
Well, no, I'm just saying, you know, in the language, I think we need to address that up front.
Pat, I'm almost sure they voted on that.
Okay.
Again, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost sure that they changed the language because they were voting on it. They changed the language and then I think it was going to be amended to that, but I'm not sure why. Maybe, I don't know what, because that was months ago.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
while ago. Yeah, they usually, the city attorney's office typically sends me a copy of the ordinance that approves those changes. I haven't seen it yet.
We'll make a note.
But let me address one thing, is that what I'm proposing in the memo in front of you is changes to the bylaws, not to the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay, so we already talked about the changes to the ordinance, and once we get whatever was approved by council back for review, if you want to make further suggestions, we can do that. My suggestions here are just for the bylaws, not for the ordinance.
Okay.
Well, there's one for ordinance 88, but that's a different thing.
Right, yeah, but the change that she's referring to with regard to the number of members
Yeah.
is only to the change of the bylaws.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a question about number 4 also. So the Article 10 should be amended to read, it says new bylaws could not be altered, amended, or repealed in new bylaws adopted by an affirmative vote, and it's crossed out, not less than 3, a majority. So does that mean, in other places you said in attendance, the majority who's in attendance, or does it mean the majority of the board?
Well, that would be majority of the board. Well, let me read that again. It says members at any regular meeting,
I'm still pretty good with
so
it.
those in attendance. So just to clarify, what it reads right now is it specifically says that you need a vote of 3 members in order to amend or replace the bylaws. Of course, that was in place before we expanded to
That's
7
right.
members, so that no longer makes any sense. So I thought instead of changing the word 3 to 5, which is majority of 7, we just say majority, because who knows, you might change the number of board members in the future again.
4 out of 7 would be a majority.
Oh, right, yes. You're right. Thanks for the clarification. I just got back from vacation, so part of me still might be on vacation.
So, if we're talking about the majority of board members present, I mean, something as important as that, shouldn't we want to have as many board members attend in the meeting before something like a change like that can be made?
Yeah.
Because if it's a low attendance, then you can have a majority, but it's a much less number.
That's something to consider. So, I mean, that's not my decision, that's the board's.
Yeah. You have to have a quorum.
Right, you do have to have a
You
quorum,
have
but
to
you
have
could
a
have a
quorum.
quorum, but still not have a
Have the
majority of the members.
That's right, yeah.
I think unless people have an excused absence, it should be the people who are here.
But the absence or presence, I mean, it's probably is relevant for anything we do. So when we vote on anything, if you haven't been here the previous time, that qualifies also. So it makes it just complicates things. It's just hopefully someone will be wise enough to say, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to vote.
The reason I'm feeling the way I'm feeling is because, you know, I look at us as a group. I think we work together real nice, and I think we've accomplished some great things. But we think differently, and I mean, we discuss things, and then we come to a consensus. But at least, you know, it's a balance of everybody is looking at the issue. I've seen situations where you just happen to have the wrong group of people attending, and then something gets approved, and it's really not fair, you know. And I guess that's my concern.
Yeah, I mean, to address that issue, the guts of what the board does is in the ordinance, not in the bylaws. So the bylaws really talk about how, in general, meetings take place and votings occur. So I think that probably Orville's less of a concern with this change to the bylaws than it would be to the ordinance.
Okay.
Bylaws is the structure with which we formed this group. The ordinances is how we enact policy as a group. Would that be about accurate?
Sure.
Anyone else have any more questions for Pat on either of these? Or did you have anything else you wanted to say about it?
No, the change that I suggested, I guess, yes. The change I suggested to the ordinance is in the other memo, and as I was reading through things, I see there's a clear conflict between two of those sections. So I suggested that you change section 888B2 because it conflicts with 887B1. But if you want to switch the other one instead, I think they just should be consistent with each other. So right now, the section of the ordinance that specifically talks about the vote required to set a level review, that is 887B1. All right, that says that the vote is by members in attendance at the meeting.
Okay.
The section that I'm suggesting that you change, 888B2, is just the part of the ordinance that enumerates the general powers of the board.
Right.
And it refers to the power of the board to set the level review, but it says it's done by majority of vote of all members, not of all members in attendance at the meeting.
Needs to be all members in attendance at the meeting.
Right.
That's what I thought, so that's the change that I
I would agree
suggested.
with that.
Same.
Okay, then
I'll move to accept the changes.
are we able to lump those into one? Can we simultaneously move to accept the changes to the bylaws as presented and 88 as amended in one motion?
Yeah, and I think the procedure for this is that I would do a memo then to the city council
No.
saying, here's what the board is requesting.
Okay. But as a vote, we can do them together?
Sure.
Okay.
So just to clarify, no changes to what I proposed.
Correct.
Well, except 88 to fix that to say full board in attendance.
Oh, is that what?
That was
Right?
it.
Well, I don't
No,
know that you
change it.
decided that, so.
No, just change it to members in attendance, not a full board in attendance, the members in
And
attendance.
members in attendance, yeah.
Yes, that's what we want to change.
Because,
it
yeah,
to.
because it conflicts in here, so we needed to make a change one way or the other, right?
Are you talking about the change to the ordinance, not to the
Ordinance.
bylaws?
Right,
Right,
the
yes.
ordinance.
Yeah, so that's what I did just by removing of all members of the board.
Yeah.
So when it says by simple majority vote, that means majority of vote of the people at the meeting.
At the meeting. So
Okay.
we're not changing your memo, we're agreeing with
Yeah.
with
Okay.
what
We're
your
agreeing
memo
with
is.
it.
Yeah, there's not a
Okay.
disagreement here. We're agreeing with both.
Yes.
So my motion is to accept the changes with no changes.
With both, yeah.
Second.
Okay. It doesn't look like we need to do a formal vote on that.
No?
I don't see a roll call.
I think you probably should.
Okay,
Yeah.
can I get a roll call on that, please?
Yes. McConnell,
Aye.
Meckus,
Yes.
Townsend,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Vanderbecht,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Who seconded that motion?
Yeah.
I did.
Okay. And then,
There we go. I can move this.
Pat, can you present the language interpretation options, please?
that's the part I'm talking about.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I was confused there for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to pass these around, this is the city's guidelines for interpretation. And,
oh yes, thank you.
yes, and I can give you a little bit more information. I don't know if you want me to wait till you have this passed out, or... So, information speaking with Kelly, is the city does not provide interpretation services at public meetings. Usually the attendees will bring someone with them, and they're welcome to do that, to interpret for them. Regarding a complainant, if they need assistance filling out a complaint form, or if the board has set the level of review at 8-8-7B1B, interview meeting with the complainant, and interpretation services are needed, the city has the ability to use Language Line, which is a service of interpretation that does cost $1.95 per minute. And then there's also the staff has the ability of using an iPad and using Google Translate.
I should just share some concerns. That sounds great, and I know it's going to be a cost savings, but I'm wondering, are we in conflict with the Americans with Disabilities Act for accessibility to citizens?
We should not be. The city is very, focused on that. So
we don't provide translation services for public meetings. It's when we go to closed session or need to do an interview. If that was a need, then these were the options.
yes.
The last paragraph talks about the American Disabilities Act.
Right, yeah, it's not a conflict with that.
So these language priorities for translated materials are complaint forms available in Spanish, French, and Arabic?
There is not. And I know Kelly was talking with communications about that today. I'm sorry, I don't know what the process is in that case, but I'm sure there is something where we can translate it, but I will have to check with Kelly to find out exactly what that means.
Okay. So each form would only have to be translated once.
Yeah, and they're not super long, complicated forms, so hopefully that wouldn't, I would guess it wouldn't be that big of a.
Okay, thank you.
So,
I appreciate you looking at that.
just question sort of a hypothetical situation. Let's say an individual who's deaf wants to attend a meeting because they want to share some concerns, and they call and inform us that the person's coming, but doesn't communicate, and they request accommodations. If accommodations are requested, do we deny them?
No, I don't think we would deny them.
Okay, so if it's requested, then it can be available. It's just not going to be available on a blanket.
Right.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, and I think that should be really highlighted and pointed out, because I can see some activist groups, if they see this, just jumping all over it, and it won't be a big deal, but you know how people like to get things in the paper to further their point? This would be a good example.
There's a list of approved vendors in here for the city to use, and Hands Up is one of them. It's sign language.
And you said most of the time they usually have family members come in to translate for them?
So for instance, you'll see like at council meetings where they'll have someone, friend, family,
Right.
someone that can.
Sorry I'm late, guys.
No worries.
Didn't know this was even here. Should I sit over there?
Right here.
Okay.
Probably. Not outside though.
Sorry, guys. Running late.
Do we need to put language in there saying, if at all possible, first request that a family member translate before going down the road, or?
These, I don't think that we can, I suppose we can suggest, but this document is not, I'm not giving that to you for you to make changes.
Okay.
It's what the city manager's office gave to us when we asked for the guidelines. So.
I think that's stated in the form that they fill out, because it says you can bring a friend, a family member,
Oh, good.
to help.
Good, I just want to make sure that we had all bases covered. Thank you.
And then, can you please explain section 888B1?
Yeah, so
I had Amanda to, I mean, just because Amanda, you had asked if,
Yes.
yeah, so you wanted,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, he's just going to explain the.
Yeah.
yeah, so that is a section of the ordinance that gives the board the power to file its own complaint. So, if somebody wants to propose that the board file a complaint, one of the members would make a motion, and then it has to be a vote. So it would have to be approved by the board. So one single member on his or her own could not file a complaint. It'd have to be done by the board, so on a majority vote.
What kind of complaints would they be? That's really open-handed.
Yeah, any sort of a complaint,
Anything.
like the ones that are always filed with the board.
Right, say for instance, like the one that was videotaped on somebody's cell phone, what, about a month and a half ago, about somebody coming from a bar. If a board member wanted to bring that up and we haven't seen it yet, and then after within the 90 to 180 days, if that didn't come up, then you could present that, and then we all vote on it, and then a majority has to pass it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Correct? Okay.
And I would only say wait until we get the reports back from the police department first.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there may already have been
Absolutely.
discipline added there.
And the complaint goes to whom?
To the board.
It goes through the normal
basic-
process.
It's just a regular complaint like
Yeah.
any citizen would file.
So basically, if we have reason to believe that there's something that should be investigated, we don't have to wait and hope that somebody files a complaint. We can just start an investigation ourselves.
Or do you have to wait for the meetings? I don't know.
I think that's a good avenue to have available, but I look at that and I kind of see a division, a fine line. It's like if we as board members look at something and we feel that an officer didn't act appropriately, then the question is, did the officer do something that's malice or something that was just outright inappropriate? Or did the officer do something and it's a situation where it shows a need for training? You know, I kind of see, you know, like when I write my reports, you know, some of the time I see more of a need to just make it known to the chief, like, hey, this is what's happening. And I kind of bring it up, and if we agree upon it, then we can focus on recommending training as opposed to getting into a more investigative process. I mean, maybe I'm out in left field with that, and maybe that's something that's none of our business, but, you know, I guess I see us as being beneficial in terms of making our police force the best that it can be.
Well, we
I
have some
guess-
room for commentary with any investigation, regardless of who files the complaint.
Right, that would have to go through the process, because all we're doing
I
is filing.
don't, yeah, and I guess I don't understand is, are we just having this as a previous discussion referencing that section of the ordinance? Or is there a proposed change? That's the part I'm not clear on,
So-
because,
I want to recommend that we do that, and that's actually going to have to be a conversation, since it would be potentially initiating a new investigation. We actually have to have that conversation in closed session, but in open session, we needed to explain that
What it would be.
this is what the preface of us being able to do that is.
Why would we do that?
Because it's our job as a board to
Look out for the
help,
citizens.
Yeah.
help make sure that the residents are.
Because how can we do that when we have the system that it goes through the chief, he does his investigation, and then after we get the evidence by looking at the cameras and everything, then we can agree or disagree and investigate however we
Yeah,
want.
it would be the same. So basically, we would initiate the investigation. And then, just as any other investigation, we would wait for the chief's report. The chief would give us a report, we would review any video, and then we would have our discussions and vote on whether or not we would sustain or unsustain our own complaint.
So my question, I'm sorry, my question is why, how would that ever come up?
Because
I
things
don't
are
understand.
released publicly, like videos are taken and they're released publicly, and then a complaint doesn't come in, but we see the video
okay.
and we think that does not look right.
Right.
As somebody who's responsible for helping
For
review the
helping,
police
right.
department,
Right.
I'm concerned
Okay,
about
yeah,
this.
I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, there was,
Or you could witness something.
Yeah.
well, yeah, but that's, you'd be.
As an
you'd just
individual,
be
as an
a
individual.
citizen.
I have a
You
point
know,
of order to
involved,
make.
you could file a complaint
I have
as
a
a
point of order to
citizen,
make. I would really appreciate if you see people raising their hand and you take turns. It would be a consideration for other members, okay?
Yeah.
So that it's not constant interruption and rudeness. So that's my point of
Sorry,
order.
Saul.
Point of order.
Sorry, Saul. Go ahead.
So I have no objection to the motion. I just think it's redundant in the sense that there's nothing right now to prevent us from complaining about the behavior of a police officer, and we've done that. So how would this be different than what we already have been doing?
Because this is investigating a specific incident that occurred that we have not had put in front of us.
But we wouldn't be doing it as a committee, we'd be doing it as just a regular citizen. I mean,
Well,
I see-
no, we have to agree as a board to initiate the investigation as a board, is what the
so-
888B1 says.
Yeah.
And I can explain the specific incident I have in mind in closed session, but this
Right.
is just explaining where that power comes from in the ordinance right now.
And
So, let me, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I get this straight. So if I see an incident, none of you guys have, and I file a complaint as a citizen, that doesn't work that way? I have to go through the board to do it?
Let me clarify that. So
Okay.
what the ordinance says is that anybody can be a complainant if they have personal knowledge about what happened. So if you saw something happen, you can file a complaint on your own.
Right.
Okay.
And then it just goes through the regular process, and I would have to excuse myself because I was the one who wrote it.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is where nobody on the board has personal knowledge about what happened because they weren't there, but they heard about something or saw it on TV or whatever, and so they make a proposal, hey, board, let's file our own complaint.
Okay.
So if that happens and the board approves to do that, then the board writes up a complaint, sends it in, just like any other complaint is done. It goes to the chief
Goes
then,
through
and
the
the
whole
chief does
thing,
his
right. Yep. Okay.
investigation. It's the same process.
I was concerned about the investigation because when I gave information that I knew about the case, it was like I did my own, I was told it was like I did my own, and
Yeah,
that
this
wasn't right.
is not the board doing an investigation. It's like any other case. The chief does it.
Okay,
Does the report and gives it back to the board for your review.
okay.
Thank you.
And, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but, you know, I just shared when I first, you know, got on the committee, I focused more on, you know, the rights of the citizen. That's what we got to look out. We got to make sure that they get a fair shake. But over the years, as I've looked at the various situations, I've kind of come to the conclusion that some of those situations is not in the did something wrong enough to take it to disciplinary or something like that, but it's the kind of thing that it's a lack of training. So I guess what I'm trying to point out is, as we discuss things like this, I think it would be beneficial to the process if we not only focus on the, you know, process in terms of making it right by getting justice, but
I just
also
think it does
looking
to
at it in
myself.
terms
I
of,
don't care if you read
if you see a situation where you feel training would benefit the force, then we need, I'm encouraging us to throw that out there too and make that part of the discussion. And then when we vote on it, we decide exactly what avenues we want to go down.
Yeah, I don't think that's any different from the way it is now. That would have applied to any complaint, including one that's filed by the board.
So further discussion on this needs to be in closed session. And at that point, we would take a vote on whether we
Will or will not file a complaint.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to be able to discuss it in closed session?
Well, when we get to closed session, I will make the motion to
Okay.
file the complaint, and then we'll discuss it and then vote on it.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. So there is no public. Is there any board information, or does anybody have any new business they want to add to the next meeting agenda? Is there any staff information?
There is.
I think there's one item on old business, though, that we haven't looked at yet. Right
Wasn't
here.
that the ordinance 8.8 that we already did
No,
with
no, that's
memorandum?
different.
No?
Oh,
You snuck one in.
So the
8.8's
part
good.
that is on the agenda for old business talks about proposed revisions to ordinance 8.8. That's not what we already talked about. This is what we talked about a couple months ago. So there was a discussion a couple months ago about amending the ordinance to address the situation where a complaint is filed, but it's illegible or incomprehensible. Okay, so the board had a discussion and I proposed something, but you never really voted on it. And then we had some feedback from the city clerk's office about some concerns about that. So I think you just need to continue that discussion and decide what, if anything, you want to do to address that situation. What I was hoping to do is to make an easy process in place for that situation without requiring a complainant to come before the board.
Okay.
That's why I proposed it like I did. But if that's not what the board wants to do, you can do whatever you see fit.
What was the language
I
you
think I
had?
dropped the ball on that too. I think I was supposed to follow up with you on that one.
That's
Through
okay,
an
yeah.
email.
There's a copy.
Thanks.
Those handwritten notes are some of the minor changes that we discussed at the previous meeting. So in other words, changing the word illegible, I think, to incomprehensible.
Yeah, we did discuss.
Yeah, but the board never voted and you never decided what you wanted to do because Amanda and I were going to talk about it, but we unfortunately never did that.
Okay.
Those are two different things. If it's illegible and you can't read the complaint, that's one thing. If it's incomprehensible, it means you can't understand what was written.
Right, and that's why we changed it, because something being illegible would only be one reason that we couldn't understand it. There could be other reasons that we don't understand it, punctuation, grammar, spelling, that are not necessarily legibility or language or...
Don't we also have a section, though, that also allows an individual, if they have difficulty for a variety of reasons, difficulty writing, that kind of thing, that they can have someone else write that for them. And so there is an option for someone to, to go down another path,
Yeah, so this addresses the situation though where somebody has already filed a complaint.
Yeah, and
They
it comes
didn't
in, we
use
can't
help.
read it.
Yeah,
We can't read it.
right.
Yeah.
Which obviously is going to be less of a concern right now because most complaints are filed online now instead of handwritten. But
Do you have a motion, or can you make a motion to convey the spirit of what this says?
Well, I guess we just need to... Can we pull that up?
I am so sorry. No, we don't have anything to, but I do have some concerns from Kelly, and I
Yes.
don't know if you want me to
Yes, please.
go over those a little bit.
Yes, please.
So one of the things that she mentioned is she feels, because and I don't think we mentioned this again tonight, but I think you wanted, one of the things that was that city clerk's office, a staff member in the city clerk's office would contact the individual asking them for clarification. And Kelly is not comfortable with the clerk's office taking on that responsibility because, of the risk that we could take the information incorrectly. I guess she's saying if we did indeed talk to that person and get some clarification, she would want that person to sign something stating that, yes, this is what I said. And I think she talked to you a little bit about it as well.
Yeah,
Kind of,
just to echo that her concerns were them kind of getting in the middle of it. Instead of just being a clearinghouse where they accept and forward that she doesn't want them to be in the middle going back and forth. Typically we do that. And we do get some where it's hard to make heads or tails, whether it's handwriting, not typically from your board, but regular complaints that come through. We have to try to make heads or tails of what the actual complaint is. And usually we'll contact those persons, but as you guys well know, sometimes they want to talk to us, we can't get a hold of them. And I think your all's thought was maybe the clerk would have better luck at getting a hold of them, but I don't think, I know Kelly's not comfortable with being in that position. She would prefer if it's not us to maybe, I would assume it would be someone on your board to do that.
yes.
Yeah, and when I drafted that, what I had in mind was just the clerk reaching out to the complainant to say, you know, line 3, word 4, I don't know what that says, just tell me what that word is. Not for a clarification of what did you mean.
In this case, you know, I agree Holly shouldn't be, or anyone shouldn't be in that position, but she should say, the board says line 4. They couldn't understand, not I.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so what I proposed that is that if either the chief or the board find something to be illegible, then the chief or the board can request that the clerk contact the complainant to clarify what that word was.
And the clerk says, the board said that, or the chief said that, not me,
Right,
the clerk.
right.
I guess I am kind of not understanding why we wouldn't just at that point set the level of review to meet with the complainant.
And that's exactly what Kelly pointed out.
Well, and
I'm thinking about the situation where it's gone to the chief but not to the board yet, and the chief can't read it.
But in that case, Chief, wouldn't you then reach out to the individual and ask for a clarification? So I think we're addressing it already.
We do reach out, and I'm sorry, Sarah, we do reach out,
problem.
and oftentimes, if you guys have seen it's very rare that we
They'll
make
actually
contact with
contact
people.
back.
And I think what Amanda just said is probably, no one's asking my opinion, but if you were, that would set it so you guys have the opportunity to meet with them so you guys can clear it up. Is that what you suggested?
Yeah, and you already have that power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, so.
But let me clarify one other thing. My point was, though, I wanted to put something in place where we could avoid the situation where a complainant doesn't want to come before the board.
Right.
If we could have something easy in place just to say, hey, we don't understand what this word is, help us in that regard so we can proceed with, you know, the process of your complaint review.
And I think I'm part of the problem with this because I think, I don't know if I'm the total thing, but I know I complained because maybe it was a recopying or something like that, but several times I'd even put my glasses on and I still couldn't make it out, you know, so what I'll do is if that happens again, I'll just bring that to you and that way we know specifically, you know, what my problem is.
I think, maybe I'm not supposed to speak at this, but
Go ahead.
I feel like what you're talking about is the copy isn't good enough for you to be able to see what's written, not that you can't understand what's written. In that case, I mean, I think you're talking about both. But
yeah.
Because we did discover just this week when copying a complaint that came in, if we just print it directly from the computer, it doesn't come out as clear as if we tell it to print it in black and white instead of color, because the color does something that fades the type. So that is something that we've already made that change. We're going to start doing that.
So how do you guys try to, my question is, how do you guys try to get a hold of somebody you don't understand what they're doing? You just call the number, or
We call them, we email, all the forms.
all the above,
of contact.
right, all the way,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So what you guys are suggesting is we do this as a committee, one of us decide, well, we're gonna call this person because we don't understand what's going on. Which is, I mean, how many times do we try to contact them before it's should be out of our hands. I mean, I feel bad for them, but how many times, how long do we, 2 months, 3 months? Or, I mean, what's the timeline on this? We never talked about a timeline, and I don't mind calling somebody, but I still want them to sign something or saying that this is what we talked about. So they can't come back saying, I didn't have the slightest, I didn't say anything like that. You know, it's because most of the complainants, I don't know, I think they look at us just as city employees or cops or whatever, you know, they wouldn't, I don't think they trust us no more than they trust the chief or any other.
Yeah, I would let that stay with the police department right now, rather than, we're volunteers. And we get a lot of work. I mean, reading all the stuff that came through for this week even, there were like 17 pages or more, and taking it all in, it takes time.
Yeah, but how often are you actually looking at this actually happening with the complaints? It would be like 1 in 15, 1 in 20. I mean, we're not looking at a regular thing.
It doesn't happen often. What happens more often is that complainants don't cooperate, and makes it nearly impossible to do an investigation with a non-cooperating complainant.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so, but some of them do. Some of them are more than happy to come in, and that we can get a lot better information.
Do you have a procedure where you say, well, we're going to try 2 or 3 times and then give up?
We usually try to contact them almost immediately, and then we'll wait a couple of weeks, because I have certain guidelines in which I need to get reports done, and we'll give what we think is a reasonable amount of time. It's usually a couple of weeks.
I think we have to look at responsibility. It's like if me as a citizen see something and I feel strongly enough about it to file a complaint, then I definitely want to see some change or some action here. So if you contact me and point out that, you know, there's an issue with, you know, what you turned in, we have a problem understanding it, and we give you some options that you can, you know, initiate to help us through it, and you don't want to cooperate, then it's really not important enough to you. I mean, you know, I feel that we can keep it with the person, we're going to stay closer to the source. But when we start spreading it out, then it's like if something's wrong, all we got is blame, you know, and I don't think we want to go there. I think we want to perfect the process so it's as concrete as it can be, but you can't keep it any more concrete than keeping it close to the source.
I feel like what I'm hearing overall is that people kind of want to leave that as it is. Is there anybody that feels differently or wants to move to accept Pat's proposed change? Or should we move on to staff
We have one more note from Kelly.
Okay.
She had just agreed with what you just said. Amanda suggested that the board could set the level of review to interview, meet with the complainant, and ask the board if they wanted a sentence noting, in quotes, if the board cannot understand the written complaint, then they will set the level of review to meet with the complainant. So I guess that's just repeating what you said.
Yeah, and if we go that road and, you know, the person doesn't want to participate, then...
Well then, yeah, we don't have enough information to
Then that's
Could we amend our rules to say the person can talk with one board member instead, and then that board member report the difference of it?
I'm not okay with that. Yeah, I'm not okay with that, because then you start down a path of you're talking as one individual to a witness, and you, excuse me, I've been down enough of those conversations that it'll go this way and it'll go this way, and you might be, you know, they might say something to you that then you feel obligated to repeat back. I guess my feeling would be just leave it as it is. Don't add anything to it. We can set the level of review. If it's difficult to read, we'll do the best job we can based on the information we have. And if the chief, as part of the investigation, is reaching out to the individual to clarify that information, that's going to happen regardless of where we set the level of review. Then we can go from there and decide then, you know, what information we have. If the person chooses not to cooperate.
Right. I think,
Yeah.
I think
I just
you're
leave
right.
it.
If he's not gonna go with the chief to get more information, he ain't gonna come to us.
Well, that's not entirely true.
Well,
That's not
most-
necessarily
well,
true.
not
I mean,
all the
especially
time.
if somebody feels that, if somebody has,
We're citizens.
somebody who's filing a complaint, if they're filing a complaint about something that happened to them, they at the very least feel that they have been harmed and victimized by police. So they very well might be much more likely to come talk to us than to go to talk to police officers with that same department that they're complaining about.
So maybe we could say, like, let's say they don't, I mean, this is, we're getting into a lot, but if they don't contact you in 2 weeks, can we send them a letter saying, if you don't want to talk to the police, please contact?
We do.
Oh,
When
okay,
you
so
get that summary, regardless of anyone's level of cooperation, if I receive a complaint, I'm investigating it from start to finish. Now, it does make it harder if we can't ask clarifying questions, but we still do the same level of review, and then we send the letter that comes to you guys, which is a chief summary, and the person who sent the complaint gets the same thing. And then through your process, they have an opportunity to.
Okay.
So that
All
still
right.
exists.
Yeah.
But
That still exists. We're
Yeah.
just, yeah.
So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is possible for the person to refile the complaint. Let's say 3 months from there.
If you're outside of that 180-day deadline, no. So, one of the changes that we made recently was, giving the complainant an opportunity to respond to the chief's report. So if the chief does an investigation and report, and it happens to say, we had a hard time understanding what this said or what it was meant, then the complainant has an opportunity to clarify that within that 21-day period after the chief's report is filed. That's already in place.
Right.
So what was the purpose, what was your intended thought process behind, you're just changing
Well,
the wording,
yeah,
or?
This is what the board asked me to do.
Oh,
months
okay.
ago.
Were you just trying to
So-
cause trouble? Or where are we going with that?
I just didn't
Like I said,
remember, I didn't
yeah.
remember the original intent, so
Maybe you weren't at the meeting, I don't
I
know.
probably wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the thought was, if a complaint is handwritten and it's illegible, let's put something in place where we can ask the complainant to clarify what they wrote without requiring that they come
So
before the board.
Would it be fair to just go with, because I think it's important that we keep separate the police department and the police review board. If we get the information and we can't comprehend it, then can we have a process we do where we can extend an invitation to the person to come and give clarification so that we can get it firsthand as a board?
Yeah, that's
That's
part of
the
the
process.
second
That's part of the
standard
process.
level of review.
Right,
The level of
and if
review.
they don't, and then we should stress, if for some reason they don't want to follow through with that, then
it'll be dropped.
that's it.
Yeah, I could anticipate somebody that might be willing to answer a phone call to say, yes, I'm in Johnson instead of Jackson, but not be willing to come before the board and sit down in front of all 7 of you.
Okay.
So we just want to leave it
So
as
do-
is.
So what do we need?
Here.
if anybody has any kind of motion that they want to make regarding those proposed revisions, then we need to do that. Otherwise, we just need to move on. If there is nothing that anybody wants to propose, we change.
Yeah, so the memo that I sent back in May, nobody ever voted on it. So
Right.
if you don't want to do anything in that regard,
Just
let it
leave
go.
it.
just let it go.
There we go.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Was there any staff information?
Yes.
We couldn't understand it, so we didn't vote.
Kelly wanted me to check with you. The way the process is right now, when we receive a complaint, we immediately send that to you in a confidential, mailing. However, it seems that sending it out immediately is causing some confusion because we you can't talk about it until we receive the chief's report. So she's asking, is it appropriate for us to send the complaint, wait to send the complaint to you until we get that chief's report? Because,
I would say yeah.
do you know what I'm?
I would say that's
And I don't know when, I know at some point we started sending those out immediately, but I guess this will be going back to the way it was before my time.
I can definitely see that. I mean, yeah, it's definitely,
Because I know I
tend to
had,
have several complaints that, and see which one for this next
Right.
meeting.
yeah, I'd rather have the chief's report before making any kind of looking at anything. I think that's just fair.
well, and I had some questions about, you know, are we going to see the video for 2209? Well, there isn't one yet available, and then because we would need the chief's report, and then we would get the video.
Okay. Then let's
Do
just,
you know what I'm saying? It's,
Yeah.
it's like it's more confusing to get that.
If we get it and think we can go watch a video, but we're not even at that point
Exactly
yet,
right.
then,
right, because I asked
yeah, we
about that.
can't do it.
Because
Yeah.
that's what I got. So, okay. So yeah, let's just do it that way. We need a motion for that, or
I don't know that we necessarily need a motion. I think that's just the
Yeah.
process. that-
Okay, then yeah, I'd say yes to that process. Let's just
So
wait
it's
till we get the
actionable?
chief's report, and then we can, and everything, let all the information be available all at once, and then we can digest it at once. I think that makes sense.
Anything else?
Also makes it.
It's easier on us.
Well, yeah, but I would prefer it not be easy on us because, you know, we all got busy schedules. And when you get behind, if you got someone that just wants to make sure that they participate in the process, then they just take the chief's support. I mean, one of the reasons that I've been kind of pushing to have things so that they're comprehensible is because I want to have my own comprehension of it. And the chief report helped, you know, but basically I feel that I have an obligation to the citizen. And that's where I want to keep my focus. I want to keep us separate. I mean, we're a team, but you know, we come to bed at different times.
How were you guys able to keep up? Because I imagine there are times where I've thought about that. Sometimes we have a lot of videos. I'm like, oh boy, this is.
I keep records when you know, as things come in, you know, I take it and I keep my records on it. And then as supports come in, I put it together. And by the time we're ready to deal with it as a group, then I've got a pretty good comprehension of it. But I'll tell you right now, if you're going to have it so that I'm going to be waiting and getting it all at the same time, I'm not going to be as effective because I've got too many other irons in the fire.
I think the challenge, I mean, it's ugly if you've got something that's got video that needs to be reviewed and you're in a compressed time frame, but I don't think that changes what the purposes of when you distribute the complaint. We can't look at the complaint, the video or any audio any earlier, and you know, hopefully the board members here would not do this, but there have been instances in the past where board members would not review the video and would not review and would just come to vote.
Yeah.
So I would hope that wouldn't be the case. It just means that within that window of time, when that is available, then we have to review it during that time and make every effort to do so.
Yeah, and in my situation, I put it together as it comes, but a lot of times I have some questions. I wonder, you know, what the heck's going on here? But when I can see it for myself, then that answers any questions that I've, you know, encountered while I'm trying to put the process together. I feel doing it that way, I'm going to be fair both to the person that's making the complaint, but also to the officer, because a lot of times when I'm getting the information, I have some concerns about whether or not the officer acted appropriately. But then once I see the video and I see all the circumstances, then I can see, well, yeah, the officer wasn't inappropriate. He or she was just trying to deal with what the hand they were given.
I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with that, but you can't see that video any sooner whether the report is sent right away or when the chief's report comes out. So you don't get that video any sooner based on when the report is sent. You have to wait for the chief's report to make that available. So it doesn't change, it doesn't give you any less time. It gives, you still have the same amount of time to view the video or listen to the audio. That is still the same. That doesn't change that at all.
And the first thing we get is the individual's complaint. That's the first thing we process.
And that's all we're talking about is whether they send it right away or wait and send it with the chief's report.
When everything's
I'm new, so the way they've been doing it's fine with me. It doesn't matter either way.
And you asked how we did it. For those of us who are no longer working, you know, I usually schedule 3 hours at a time to come in and just plow through it. And sometimes that has to take 3 or 4 different times to come in and see it all. But for the people who are working, it is harder for them.
How long does it take you to get the videos ready for us to view?
Well, we watch a different version of the video, one that's yours are slightly redacted, but the redaction process depends on what we have to redact. So that can take a day usually, but we have software that helps
I
us.
wasn't disagreeing with you.
So what I was thinking
know that.
is, you know, you're going to have the video anyway, so if the video can come faster.
I wouldn't release the video before I release it.
Okay, all right, yeah, got it.
I have to do 9 to midnight on weekends.
Yeah, and you're the one I'm thinking about because you're the one that's scheduling. I'm like, oh man, how is she doing this?
Put you in the corner with a laptop, right?
One of the things, just if I could, it's just kind of been on my mind, you alluded to it. You talked about, you talked about sometimes there's not a policy issue, but a policy violation, but there might be a training or that's the one thing. I'm trying to do a better job. Usually, when I first started this, I would just say, it's not a policy violation, moving on. And then I noticed that the board had comments on, you know, we thought the officer could have done this or should have done this or how about this. And I took that into consideration because I have those conversations, I just was not putting those in the supervisor and chief report. So now I am putting those in so you guys can see that I do recognize that they're on every single call. We get a lot of complaints, not a lot, but we get complaints either internal or external. And although we might not find a policy violation, we do find maybe a policy failure that we have to reevaluate the policy, which we count on you guys to help us with. But also just like, hey, this might have been a better strategy. And that's what the supervisors do all day, every day. And I'm starting to put those more in my chief's report or summary, so you guys recognize that I'm not missing those things. And when you guys have those comments too, that's appreciated. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and when I throw that out there, I'm not doing it in terms of being critical, but I'm doing it because I see us as being a team. And I just hate to see us focus all the time on what the officer did wrong. You know, when a lot of times the officers are doing his or her job, but they encounter some unfortunate situations they have to address to, and they may not handle it the best, but it's not that they're a bad person, but it's just that if every tool we can give them, it's going to be beneficial to us as a department.
As a community.
I felt like we had a consensus on the sending of materials, and now I feel like we don't.
Yeah.
So we need to decide on answering that question for the city. Do we need to do a vote on it?
You need a
Do we
motion.
care enough one way or the other?
So summarize which options you are.
Either continuing to mail things out as they come in like they're doing now, or waiting until it's actionable and we have access to video evidence and the report and sending it all to us at the same time.
I put it to a vote, you know, because I think we all may have different feelings about it. Majority can rule. Majority can rule.
Sure.
I would so move.
Which one are you moving
The
for?
last one. The one that we wait until after we see not send the report out right away, send it to the department and wait for their information to come back, and then we can view everything. And
So you're saying at one
Anybody?
time? saying
Yeah,
wait
so
to get it all in winter.
she's voting to get it when we have access to other evidence as well.
I'd second that.
Okay.
So
Seconded?
let me clarify, make sure I understand. The request would be that the copy of the complaint first comes to the board at the same time as the chief's report comes to the board.
Yes.
Because there's nothing that can be done.
No,
That's your motion.
What he's saying, what
That's
you're
what
doing
you're
now
saying.
is sending them both at the same time to me and to that.
I thought
That's
it
what's
was.
happening now.
Like it
Right, with the
Mid-July,
complaints, and what we send them,
Send it as you get
So
it.
right now, we get the
So
complaint,
I think.
but we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
We get the complaint, and then we wait, and later we get the chief's report, and then we get access to
That's what I
video.
thought
Yeah.
it was going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're voting to leave it as it, you're moving to leave it as it is?
Yes, it's gonna be my vote.
Wait a minute, I'm confused too.
Okay,
As it
Okay.
is,
So,
we get
yes,
stuff
I-
piecemeal.
right, yeah.
As it is, we get stuff piecemeal. We want to wait, your motion is to wait until we get everything together.
Right, but, and that includes the, even sending the respondent letter and everything out. That just means when we get it, it goes, I thought that's what the motion was.
What do you mean about the respondent letter?
Yeah,
just
that's,
the acknowledgement letter that we send to the complainant. Because right now, I'll send you the complaint and the acknowledgement letter.
Can I simplify this? Can I just make a motion that we vote to leave the procedure as it currently is? And then if that doesn't work, then we can vote for whatever else you want to try.
I second that motion.
We already have a motion
Motion on
and a
the
second
table.
on
Yeah.
the table, so we have to decide what to do with
The
that.
motion is now on the table because it hasn't been seconded.
Yeah.
It
I
was-
second it, I
She
seconded
seconded
her
it.
Did
motion.
you second
But
it?
now we're
But then
making
you,
sure.
then you added to it.
Well, you can withdraw the motion.
Oh, yeah.
I
Or
didn't.
you can withdraw your second.
Clarify just.
I just want to make sure that we're all understanding what Jerry moved. So you're moving to wait to get the initial complaint until we have the report and can watch the video evidence. Okay,
Right.
and then you seconded that.
And then I seconded that.
Okay, so then we need a roll call vote on that, please.
Townsend,
No.
Jensen,
Aye.
Downing,
No?
Vanderbeck,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Meckus.
No.
Okay,
It's okay to disagree once in a while.
Yeah.
It is.
so the noes are Townsend, Downing, and Meckus. The ayes are Jensen, Vanderbeck, Nichols, and McConnell. It's 4-3.
The majority?
So that means, I'm gonna make sure I understand again, we're not gonna see the complaints at all until they come along at the same time with the chief's report.
Yes.
Because you can't do anything.
Can't do anything with them anyway.
Okay.
You can't get the video, you can't do anything with them other than you go, oh, okay.
Well, I always like reading them.
We know what to look for.
I get that.
Answers my questions so when I look at the video.
Okay, we already, let's go.
Okay. Was there any other staff information?
The only other thing is, how do you feel about this room versus the other?
I like the other.
You like the other one? Okay. In August, we are back in here again because since we moved it to August 16th, we are on the same night as council meeting once again. So we'll be in here. But otherwise, I will put them in there.
Do we have to vote on that?
No.
We gotta have a
We got a
discussion.
lot more voting
Let's have a
coming up, so
discussion.
it's long.
Let's,
I forgot to move the August one in my calendar.
Yeah, I just input them all on my phone, so I have them.
okay.
I just have it on a repeat the second Tuesday of every month, and I forgot to change that
We haven't
one.
had the input from the police.
So tentative meeting schedule, future agendas, we had moved August to the third Tuesday, so that's August 16th, and then September 13th and October 11th. Do those still work for everyone?
We'll make it work.
I'm gonna move to adjourn to executive session. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Adjourn open session at 6:34 PM. return to regular session at 7:06 p.m. I'm going to move to set the level of review for complaint 2206 at 887B1 and to not sustain it.
It's B1.
Sorry, B1A, yes, which is on the record with no additional investigation, and to not sustain it. Can I get a second?
Oh, who moved?
Who is the?
You
I
did.
moved, yeah.
I'll second.
And can I get a roll call, please?
Nichols,
Aye.
McConnell,
Aye, reluctantly.
Meckes,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Downing,
Aye.
Vanderbeck.
Aye.
And then I'm going to move to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 7:07 p.m.